Hi, welcome to No Concession Sessions. We have some special guests in here tonight. This is our first show where we're looking at the community sector and our public-private partnerships with those in our community. So I don't know if you have musician skills. I'm sure we'll discover that in our conversation. Today's guests, we have Faith Powers, who's the executive director at the Laurel Center, and Brandan Thomas, who is the chief executive officer of Winchester Rescue Mission, here to join us today. And my partner in crime and in culinary destruction, Chris Kenworthy.
Howdy.
I'm Justin, and Corey's here on the ones and twos in the back for us. All right, thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. Kind of last notice, as usually everything we do every week is just always kind of adding to this project we're doing in the communication podcast world. We wanted to have you all here because we are partnering or have partnered with you recently, and that's something that we plan on doing long term here in Winchester at the Monument and all of the organizations that we represent in our restaurant concepts and real estate and the other things we do up here on this side of the block. So please feel free to introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into some questions, Q&A here for sure.
Man, thanks for having us. I truly appreciate it. You guys have already been really incredible to us at the mission, doing a couple events for us. And so, man, I'm excited to be here to talk a little bit about the mission and extend a gratitude to you guys for the support you've already shown to us. And so I'm really grateful for that. So my name is Brandan, and I get the privilege of being we just changed my title to CEO, so I sound a little bit fancier than what I am. But I get the privilege of serving at the Winchester Rescue Mission with men and women that I love, and with an incredible staff. It's been an incredible journey up to this point. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I love what I get to do, and the folks that we get the privilege of helping. And it's folks like you, community partners, that help us do what we do. And so, man, thanks for letting me come and talk about that, and thanks awesome for the support so far.
Vicky spoke to me about you when she was here visiting with us, planning some things. I think she's in Iceland right now.
Yeah, she's in Iceland.
Invited her out here.
Yeah. She's a rock star, man. She puts in probably between 40, 50 hours a week for free. So, wow. Yeah, she works for free. It's pretty incredible. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And she's helped us grow. A lot of the growth we've experienced has been a lot of her hard work. And so, truly grateful for all that she's brought to the mission for sure.
Right on. And Ms. Power?
Yeah, I want to thank you as well for inviting us here. Last minute or not, we're just grateful to be invited and grateful to have the monument in our community. And you all have such a great focus on the community and partnering with nonprofits. You don't see that a lot with many of the businesses. So we're grateful for that. We can't do it alone. I think Brandan would probably agree with this, that, it takes a village to do the work that we do. The Laurel Center, for those that might not know, is that we're a domestic violence and sexual assault center. Been doing this for 40 years. We were established in 1981, and, it's a special group that does this work. We see some pretty tough cases, and, the people that provide the services, I'm just blown away every day how they can support individuals that have been broken in body and spirit and soul, and walk in those waters and get wet and come back and do it each day. So the communities are, I think, very fortunate to have a Laurel Center, as it is fortunate to have a mission, quite frankly. We do, I think, very specialized work here.
Awesome. Thank you. I know that, whenever people see as a stakeholder, they look at the victims that you're helping as potentially your customer, your guest, the people that you're assisting. Same for you. And they don't realize that they're being helped. So I'm being helped every time that someone has a reduction in the possibility of violence, or anytime that there's a family in my neighborhood or my community that has strengthened their bond. Maybe a woman or a child or family that survives something. Right. And once they go from survival mode to thrival mode, it is very highly likely that they'll be able to assist someone else.
Absolutely.
Or teach their children, and those children teach their community and their peers how to prevent it or what path to take.
That's awesome that you see that, because it is like putting a pebble in the water and you see those circles. I mean, domestic violence and sexual assault touches everybody, not just the victim, quite frankly, but children. Children that grow up in an environment where they see one of their parents being abused. And it's important to note that, abuse isn't just a female, although by and large, most of the abuse is female, but, men can be abused too. And when kids grow up in that environment, often they repeat that behavior, and that cycle continues. And so, our goal is to not just provide services for the survivors, but we also we have a children's program where we provide support to children, and we go into the school system and we have a curriculum that we're trying to teach what healthy behavior and relationships look like, right? So that we can end that violence so it doesn't become generational.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Whenever you think about it as being, primarily men, and I try to understand that's because that I think that women are equally as angry as men, but they don't assert or become aggressive as often. Women, they're the same emotional humans that men are. It's just for some reason, when we're in a fearful spot or threatened, we probably have a propensity to act out and lash out with assertion. But yeah, it can definitely happen in the other direction. I don't really think about that often.
It does. It does. Not as frequently, but in fact it does. We serve men as well as women in our programs.
Awesome. And having both of you here at the same time was like another attempt to get to the root of what happens in our community, what could be the root cause. And it can be the state of consciousness that you have, and mental health being a part of it, and so on. What do you think are the commonalities between the groups that you assist, between the two of you?
I assume quite a bit. Yeah, probably quite a bit of common. So. The fact of the matter is there's just not enough beds. And so there seems to be quite a bit of overlap between the two organizations, because the lack of beds for, folks in need just continues to grow in our community. Our community's, one of the fastest growing communities in Virginia. And so that need just, keeps going. And so from what I can tell, we end up serving a lot of the same folks. There's a lot of overlap because, again, there's just not enough beds to take care of the need that's there.
Well, there is an intersection with domestic violence and homelessness. The number one reason that women become homeless is domestic violence, right? They'll flee from a situation, and they're either going to live in their cars, or they're going to live on the street, or if they're lucky enough, they can go to the mission. And so there's that overlap. I think drug and alcohol use, quite frankly, a lot of times anxiety is one of the root causes of violence. And so people often self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, which fuels a lot of the violence. I'm sure you guys see the drug and alcohol use. And so I think that's some commonality there as well.
We see that in our business models. We invite people into our places for extended periods of time, and we've all had those uncles or cousins that at the family reunion or Christmas might have a few too many, and it happens with us too sometimes. So it's also like our duty as respected and responsible vendors of alcohol and service people to keep that in mind,
Absolutely.
We're just having a safe space for our guests is important, and for our employees and our team for sure. That's the culture piece that I always talk about and preach about. Do you have any statistics, or have you had a lot of experience with people coming into this community from a certain place? Like, why Winchester? I didn't expect it when I first started working here.
I get asked that a lot. How many folks are actually from Winchester? And we have really upped our game in keeping statistics of who we serve, how we serve them, what we do, and Just the other day we pulled statistics, and the truth is that the majority of the folks that we serve previously to becoming homeless had a Winchester address. So we're tracking somewhere in the 70% range of folks from Winchester, 22601 zip code, and then somewhere in the 20% range of somebody who had a 22602, 22603 zip code prior to experiencing homelessness. So that, I guess, that misconception of people who are coming from all other places and because of the services, it's just not accurate based on what we're seeing. A good bit of who we're serving are folks who are our neighbors, our residents, our folks. And so, maybe they came here prior to experiencing homelessness, and, weren't able to get, completely established. But for the most part, it's our neighbors that we're serving. And so, and I think that's an important message to share with folks. And I personally think, if we want to go down a rabbit hole, a lot of that's because of the mental illness piece and getting the services that are necessary for folks with mental illness. And because, Virginia really ranks so low on, mental health beds and mental health services, because of that, we end up seeing a whole lot of our neighbors end up in a position that really they shouldn't be in, that is, in my opinion, completely avoidable, but those services just aren't available.
Yeah. And you go to the mental illness root cause in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So as a father, husband, leader of people, we get angry sometimes. Like I said, everybody does, right? And I've noticed that, I'm not perfect or anywhere close to it, but the way I reacted to my staff in my 20s versus how I reacted now is somewhat different. And I was fortunate in my upbringing, to understand honor and protection of women, and also would not be tolerated otherwise. But do you think that the attackers or assailants, the victimizer in your organization? Thank you. Say I'm on the stage now. Yeah. This lady's a great teacher and doctor, and basically, again, professional here on our podcast. But do you think that the mental health of those men, do you look at that and the perpetrator and see, is there any follow up in that regard as to why are they doing this? And
well, we look at research. I mean, we're not a mental health facility, right? People that are coming into us have been traumatized, and obviously, they're in a delicate state, and many of them have their own mental, health issues, and we don't have, like I said, mental health professionals there. We do have trained staff in terms of trauma-informed care, and we do the best we can. We refer out a lot in the community, but as Brandan said, there's just not a lot of support for individuals that have mental health issues. But it is a challenge in what we do, and as I said, so is the substance abuse issues that run alongside domestic violence and sexual assault.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that a good important thing that both you guys are tackling, in addition to the mental health issues being a cornerstone of the problem, it's stopping a perpetuated cycle, right? You find a lot of times, my wife works in mental health. She's a school counselor for Loudoun County Public Schools. It's her birthday. Happy birthday. But I feel that you see that it's for whatever reason becomes inherent, even though you are a victim at some point in time, you project that victimization onto somebody else afterwards, and trying to break that cycle and trying to figure out what the key is to breaking, to unlocking that cycle and going forward. Mental health definitely being there, substance and alcohol abuse issues being there, societal disadvantage, being homeless or being estranged. So, I think that's a good point where both you all are, overlapping in sort of a Venn diagram of help. So it's a very cool thing to see. And
you make a good point. Really part of breaking that cycle, Chris, is really trying to get people the knowledge that they need, really. And so we provide, we have licensed therapists on staff. We have counselors And we try to give people information. As hard as this is going to be, I think, for you maybe to believe, because it is out there in the community, people don't believe me. We see individuals that don't know that they're in an abusive relationship. Isn't that hard to believe? We think of abuse purely from the standpoint of it's physical.
Sure.
But really abuse can be emotional, right? Abuse has to do with power and control. Anytime you're controlling someone's livelihood, their ability to navigate in the world, right? That's abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? It's like it's a prison without bars.
Right. Right.
And at any given point in time, somebody could physically say, in the middle of the night, I'm up and out of here, but why don't they? And what is it that's continuing to keep them grounded in that situation that's tearing them apart?
I was hoping someone would ask that question. I probably get that asked at least 1 or 2 times a week, right? Why? Well, Faith, if it's so bad, why don't they just leave? There is a myriad of reasons. One, they, believe it or not, they love their abuser, right? They believe they're going to change. They stay in the relationship hoping at the end of the day that the abuse will stop, right? They have children who love their parent, the abuser parent. And many of the individuals, particularly women we see, they don't work. Their economic support is their abuser. So they stay in the relationship, particularly if they have children, so that they can feed their kids and they have a roof over their heads, right? Another reason is they don't want to leave their pet. A lot of times abusers will use their pets as a control mechanism to keep them in the relationship. We had a situation some years ago, this predated me, where we had a lady who was in a very abusive situation, and she thought she had done a good job of hiding her dog. She had actually put her dog with a vet, and the abuser found the dog and called her up and said, look, I found the dog. I'm going to kill the dog. And she ended up killing herself in shelter with us.
Because he killed the dog?
Yeah. Well, we don't know that he did.
Yeah.
We didn't find that out.
He weaponized the relationship.
Exactly. Exactly. So there are a myriad of reasons why individuals don't leave the relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, so you're outnumbered right now, 3-1, 4-1. Sorry, Corey. Do you think that, sometimes my upbringing has been really tough, but a lot of the tough men that were in my life taught me to first think about what my actions and proactive actions could lead to getting me out of a situation or over a challenge. Sometimes the journey in life is difficult when you do difficult tasks, whether it be education, sports, leadership, marriage, whatnot. What is it that, and I'm of the belief that men can impact men maybe at a faster rate other than mothers and teachers, which are extremely important. But if we take self-accountability for the weaknesses of our fellow man, like, is there a format in which we could do that and it not be perceived as weakness? Because sometimes you could coddle someone or over love them in the wrong way and weaken their ability to sustain trauma and trouble and stay unwavering in life.
You kind of live it. Because
life is hard.
It's relatively new to society for male vulnerability emotionally to be okay, right? It's probably about 20 years since it's been. You use sitcoms as a barometer for that. Like in the 80s, it used to be like the big joke would be like, "Oh gosh, you got feelings. Oh man, you sissy boy." And so for a lot of times, I mean, that led to a lot of pent up frustration, pent up emotions that lead to lashing out, and probably 1% of the problem that you see in both, like with the spark of mental illness and that would end up to a domestically violent situation. So now that we live in a society now where it's people can be better educated on how to deal with their emotions and be more productive and how to refocus that those emotions positively. I hope that we can see a change and for the better and help disrupt these cycles of domestic violence, mental illness, and drug and alcohol abuse, which usually form a pyramid. I mean, 9 times out of 10, there's you're going to see that there's not a lot of times you're going to meet somebody that's going to be absolutely sober and have just one or the other two problems. There's always that spark in the powder, where they say the spark the keg or whatever. But so do you guys provide services that kind of take people that are in the situations where they don't have those types of role models to give them that guidance?
Mentorship,
or you have programs that do that?
Yeah, so we also have licensed counselors on staff. We have mental health professionals on staff from Northwest Community Service Board that work in our facility, and then we also have case managers who work with each resident who comes in and helps them overcome their whatever their barriers are that have led to their homelessness. So we see about our numbers have really increased quite a bit recently. So we currently serve about 34 men. We have 8 women living in our facilities, and so we're only supposed to have 32 men in our men's shelter and 6 in our ladies' shelter. So we got to do what we got to do.
Edit that part out, Corey.
To meet that need. No, it's okay. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't tell people no, so we find a way to get them in, and whether it's put them on a cot or whatever we can do to serve them, that's what we do. And so, but our staff comes alongside of them, and whatever whatever led to their homelessness, whatever the situation is, and it is all sorts of stuff. We partner them with whatever resources necessary to help them move out of that state of homelessness. And so we have, again, we see a lot of mental illness. There's a study that just came out of UCLA that showed that 75 to 80% of folks who are homeless have some type of mental illness. And so, again, we see that barrier being quite a significant one, again, because of that reoccurring theme of not enough services in our community. So finding those resources to be available is very difficult. And of course, you guys may know that last summer, 5 of our 8 state hospitals stopped taking new patients. And even getting them to take patients now is very difficult for just different reasons. And so finding beds for folks with mental illness is very difficult. So they oftentimes end up on the street rather than in the hospital to get the services and the treatment that they need. There's, so many, I often, when given the opportunity to speak, will share with folks that homelessness is not a poverty issue. In my opinion, homelessness is a policy issue. And so, because of that, we see the need to, really meet these folks where they're at in their struggle and help them overcome that.
Yeah, it's public policy, absolutely. Just thinking about what you're speaking about, and I know that recently the Laurel Center changed its building and was able to expand. Is that correct? Or?
Well, we built a new building and moved in 2018. So we went from being able to serve about 12 individuals in shelter to, we pre-COVID could serve 28 people in our emergency shelter. And then, so our building is over 3 floors, and we have a third level where we have 4 efficiency apartments up there. So now COVID, we're still under requirements by the state of Virginia for social distancing. And so our capacity has been really slimmed down. So we can only put 1 individual or 1 family in a room. Typically, our beds are bunk beds, and we can, get more people in a room than we can right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were able to expand. Policy is still in place that could reduce the amount of people you're able to help. Mm-hmm. You're about to be able to double some capacities as well. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we have a new facility that we are about to begin renovation on shortly, Valley Avenue, and that will take us from. We'll be able to have 60 beds in the new facility.
It's amazing. If you look around as a fellow Christian, the Great Commission is followed everywhere. There's people preaching on the street here in Winchester sometimes, but the command of loving yourself first, so that if you love yourself correctly, you can love God, then you're not going to destroy people's faces or your spouses. And the second is love yourself as your neighbor, or love your neighbor as thyself, right? Sorry. So, like, with all the church organizations that we have and all the advocates for greater policy, all the businesses, it seems like it would be better than it is. What do you think is causing the dilution of resources in such a concentrated area? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well,
I love it.
what I'll say to you so I've been here for 5 years, and when I first came in, I was actually hired to get that new building built, and I would go around community and I would talk to community leaders, and a number of them said to me, Faith, this is Winchester. It's an all-American community. We don't have that much abuse. I mean, that was, and to a large extent, even today, I think that there is this belief, and probably with homelessness, that we don't have a lot of homelessness. I think people turn a blind eye to what they don't want to see and deal with, quite frankly. For us, I think one of our central problems was that our security system in our former facility, which was built in like 1830s, right, was anonymity, right? We just didn't tell people where we were at. We thought that was safe. But in doing that, what we ended up doing is not revealing to the community how much violence that there is, right? And it was in doing this multi-million-dollar capital campaign where, it was in the paper. You can't walk that back after you've been in the paper. Everybody's going to know where you're at. And that was actually a very positive thing, because I think it says to the community, there is abuse here, right? Your neighbors are being abused. It's not a shameful thing. It's reality. We have to deal with it. I mean, 2 important statistics. 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence sometime in their lifetime, and 1 in 6 will experience sexual assault. When you're dealing with those kinds of statistics, somebody that's been abused. You might not know who they are because they're not going to reveal that. Mm-hmm. But those are national statistics. And so there is abuse here, and it's a lot of it. And I think that's been part of our challenge. I'm sure, Brandon, you have your own challenge there.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That idea that it's not my backyard, this doesn't happen here, that we, by having good services, attract people who are homeless or, facing abuse or whatever. When the case is, we're not attracting anybody. It's here in our backyard. And it's continuing to grow as our community continues to grow.
Yeah. Circling back to what I was talking about earlier, like trying to get to the root of things, is the mentorship part of how to try to teach people how to make good decisions one-on-one. Sometimes I believe you have a philosophy or strategy with localization of church congregations, in smaller groups, because more can be revealed in groups of 3 to 4, as far as like leadership and time spent. And then the other was identifying the vulnerabilities of a man to admit that there's an issue or a mental illness or weakness, in combination with, so you spoke that, and I'm assuming mostly, say, men are controlling some assets within the household, or in some way controlling so that there's a level of emotional or financial abuse in that way. So like, in identifying what a man should be, in both having authority and power when necessary, but not too much power when not necessary, admitting there's a weakness when there is one, but not being weak. So it's a very complex place, and I think that men of in both corporate America, sports, media, everyone has kind of had to look and say, well, what does this mean to be a man in this society right now? And I'm being held to account. So maybe with the whole, everyone can admit, yes, men should be held to account. But what about the ones that do say, we're a good old American town, it's not our problem. We believe in pulling up our bootstraps and putting in the hard work. It's a very blue collar, hardworking place, family and faith, right? But sometimes you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, maybe my household's okay, but the greater house around me is not okay. Right. Whether other than looking at it as an entitlement or, Does that make any sense?
It does. And, you were talking about mentorship, which I think is kind of interesting. There's actually a group here called the Gentlemen's Club, and they're very supportive of us. And I think they're great role models. And I think that men in this community could be great role models for other men, and when they see, particularly, I was thinking when you're talking about, what you do, you have a bar and that kind of thing. When you see in your bar environment, that there looks like we're heading down a path that there could be abuse, do you step in?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That's an important thing. I think across the country, the attitude is, hey, it's none of my business. There's a fight. I'm not going to get into it. But I think it's important to get into it and say, wait a minute, that's not how you should be treating that person, right? Whether it's a male or female, right? Yeah. Step in and try to, but recognize, the other part of that and saying it, and I'm a little hesitant, is you could be in danger as well. We just had a golf tournament, the Adam Carter Golf Tournament was the second year. And it was a group of guys that get together each year to honor their buddy who lost his life a little over 2 years ago over in West Virginia. He had a friend. She was a girl, wasn't his girlfriend, but it was a friend, and she had just separated from her abuser, and the guy was stalking her. And they were at a bar talking about, this separation, and he came in and he killed the guy. And there was just recently last year, you might recall, there was a situation at a rest stop here in Virginia where people stepped in and they were severely injured because this guy was beating up, I don't know what the relationship was, but a woman at this rest stop. And so it's a tricky situation when you step in. You do have to be careful. But I think, men have a role to play in helping other men kind of see that, women aren't objects, right?
Right.
Don't objectify them. They're human beings, and they deserve, to be treated well and with respect. Absolutely.
Yeah. Being a father of a little girl really changes your perspective on that, for sure. Yeah. And just growing up and seeing somebody you love change, from girl to woman, if you mean. Yeah. So talking about funding projects, private-public partnerships. So with the Laurel Center would be a private-public partnership. You're a private entity altogether. What are the challenges in funding and getting things to move faster in systems that are slow? I researched that like been 22% cut all around, and especially in your worlds. Why is that? And any solutions if you were in charge of how you'd fix it?
Wow, you want to take that? It's multifaceted.
Be careful, whatever. We're in the entertainment business here, but we.
Yeah. I think it's really multifaceted. I will tell you that. So about 70% of our operating expenses are covered by state and federal grants. And it was challenging before, but COVID just really made it much more challenging. The legislature this year was very late in coming to terms with the budget. That's affected us. We just had a call this morning. Typically in the past with the grants that we got, if the contracts were late coming out, because the grants are contract, right, for services, we have to agree if we're going to provide X level of service, for a certain sum of money. It's a contract. And they're late coming out, and typically in the past, if they were late, it wasn't a big issue because we would get reimbursed retroactively. Our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. And they're telling us this year they're late coming out, and guess what? We're not going to reimburse you. And we continue to provide those services. We didn't stop providing them, right? So we have no way of recouping that. So I think COVID has, messed things up. There's a lot of need locally. I mean, there are so many people that go to the locality, looking for money. And I can't say that I think the locality, we serve 4 jurisdictions, City of Winchester, Frederick County, Clark, and Warren County, have a good process for determining how money is allocated in the nonprofit community. Sometimes I feel like it's who you know, right? And what is their philanthropic focus? And I'm not sure that's necessarily the best way to allocate funding. Yeah. So I think sometimes it's the process, that's involved. And just doing a grant, incredible amount of hours that you end up putting in. And if you don't have the resources, staff member that can do the grants, you're probably not going to apply for a grant, right? The state and federal grants are bare to fill out and do.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of...
Not to mention the reporting that follows up with that grant. And most of your grants actually will not pay for the reporting that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. So, it is really a messy situation in regards to, getting the funding to do what's necessary to be done.
Right.
Brandan makes an excellent point. All the grants that we have, they'll only pay for direct service personnel. So your bookkeeper, that's not direct service. They don't pay for them, right? Your development person, they don't pay for that. Anybody that's not providing, counseling, in our case, therapy, our shelter managers. And yet, how do you run a nonprofit without those administrative positions? And so we end up having to really rely on the community, our fundraisers, right, to be able to cover those unfunded positions.
Wow.
So I remind people all the time, we have to raise money to do the job that we do, where, most, folks get, they have a product that they sell or, so you don't have to raise money to do your job. You come in and do your job. Your job is, selling the product, doing the thing. But in order for us to sell the product, do the thing, so to speak, we have to raise money to do that first.
Yeah.
And so it gets, so not only do we have the 9-to-5 job, so to speak, then we have the after hours job of raising the funds to be able to do the 9-to-5 job. And then there comes the entitlement of folks who give. And, that can sometimes be a bear. So grateful for all of the incredible individuals who support us in so many ways. But, folks will show up with, something and, whether it's used underwear or whatever, kind of being funny there, but that happens,
Yeah, it does.
And they're like, you should take this. Well, we don't need that. Well, why, I thought you were neat. I mean, people can get really gnarly in their response to you because they think you should be, responsive every second. You should be, they don't really see the, 40, 50 hours a week we're putting in doing the job that we do. And then on top of that, raising the funds. And that's the reason why burnout in nonprofits is so high, because it is, you're dealing with really, really tough situations. I read a statistic the other day that shelters are experiencing, just like everybody else, but we're experiencing this high turnover. 8 months is the average for somebody to stay employed at a shelter. And the reason is because the work that we do is so difficult, so hard. And then, then the funding issue of, people who give thinking that they're entitled. I mean, folks will show up that are, that want to volunteer or have volunteered at the mission and walk through the joint like they own the joint. And we'll say, hey, can we help you? Because we have a, check-in process, all that. And they'll get really upset with us because we're saying, hey, you got to, just to walk through this place, you got to, be background checked. You got to be part of the whole process here. And they will get really upset because they feel entitled to, well, we gave $50 last month. You should let us in. And
I thought that was only at the Laurel Center. We have the same dynamic. I mean, we have people that want to donate clothes, and we don't have a storage facility or the volunteer base to sort clothes and maintain this. We've worked out relationships in the community where we direct those donations to, and our clients can go and access, those clothes and those donations. But, Brandan's right. I can remember when we built our facility, we had new furniture donated for many of our rooms. And I literally so we did tours before we officially opened the shelter because the community really did pay for the building of that facility, and I wanted to show them, how that money was spent. And I literally had people say to me, well, some of this furniture is nicer than what I have in my own home. And there's this expectation that somehow the folks that we serve should be satisfied with second and third hand-me-downs. And I'm like, no. Well, these are people that have left everything behind, right? Well, they're in trauma. I want to put them in an environment that's inspiring, right? That's clean, that's safe, right? That things function the way they're supposed to. Yeah.
That's crazy. I had a small stint of my career early in my 20s was in a public government, and part of it was in the procurement level of it. So anything over 10,000, I needed to get authorization on and so forth. But what would really perplex me, and I might be speaking, in ignorance or whatever, but towards the end of the fiscal year, if there was any unencumbered funds available from budget, there would be like this crazy maniac push for me to try to find stuff to buy. And I would recall that compared to my education on private business enterprise and how much different the profit motive is. So we would definitely in the private sector want to retain those funds and forward them to the next year. But in order to get authorization on the next budget, they want to show proof of necessary use of those funds, right? What if there was some way in which you could quantify some of the results you get and then encourage those who are in charge of those funds to find extra unencumbered funds every year to then either be incentivized through a personal bonus of their own, say, look what I did to help save money, or so it's more like the profit motive, and then in turn be able to take those funds and not just waste them, but then to allocate them in which other places need them. I don't know if any of that is in ignorance or is that's a good idea.
No, I love that. I think one of the things, we are oftentimes not eligible to get any kind of funding from like HUD and things like that because their funding model changes and shifts so much, and it's pretty insanity. And we could probably do a whole podcast on the brokenness of that whole system. But I think oftentimes in the, especially within like the government giving funding and things like that, there's no mechanism at the end to ask a very, I think, vital question, which is, what did you do?
Yeah.
Where's the results of what you did with the money you were given?
Yeah.
And that's not the case. It very much is kind of the model that you've, spoke about, which is, you just got to spend these funds to get more funds. And nobody's asking this really important question, which is, where did that money go? And so if you look at HUD funding for homelessness, since they made this shift to Housing First in 2013, and really, if you go all the way back to 2000, the federal budget, HUD funding went, up and to the right, but homelessness also went up and to the right. We didn't do anything to fix it. And at the end of the day, because we're putting the money in the wrong places and we're not asking really important questions, which is, what did you do with the money? What's the outcome with what you did? Because that's really doesn't seem to be the motivation to know what we're doing is working. It just, are we able to tell a good story? And that's what really gets into, I think, some of the problems with even solving issues like this and why money seems to be a constant issue.
Oh, yeah.
So we're a little different in that we, as I said, we're state funded, and there's a database. It's called Vidata, where we have to put into that system all the services that we provide to anybody in our anywhere, and we do. Our catchment areas, as I said, is City, Winchester, Frederick, Warren, and Clark counties. But we get people from across the state, from West Virginia, from Maryland, Carolinas, and all over. And we also do surveys. We actually survey our clients and ask them. It's like an 8-question survey. And that information goes into the state. We don't even see it. It just goes in blind to them. The question I always have, though, is, do they look at it, right?
Right.
For us, our grants are really use them or lose them, right? They want the money back. They're very specific about how we can spend it, right? and if we don't spend it, they get it back. I always wonder what happens to that money when they get it back.
Yeah.
Where does that go? Right?
That's what I'm talking about. That should be somewhere like they did good with what we gave them.
Right.
And they still have some. Let's let them have that back with some. That's crazy. Yeah, that's how it would work in
business. Wouldn't that be nice?
If you were really good at what you did and you proved that you were able to get ROI on less capital, you'd probably be cool with getting more capital when you needed it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That should be the point, right? But that's not the point. The point is not that. And so,
I mean, a good case in point, we're trying to do something a little innovative, and the state and I have been battling back and forth for about 2 years. So we purchased a piece of property that's north of where our center is, and it had an old freight station on it. We're currently in the process of renovating it and just trying to get state money to be able to do the rehab, with the idea that this is a model where it's part of our workforce development program where we can put individuals who have gaps in their employment, and we can assess those gaps and provide them with some skills that will help them get a better job, right? It's not an end point, it's a beginning point for many individuals. And we needed money for renovation with the idea that this program will, when it's up and running, because it's a cafe concept, will be a revenue stream that hopefully will be self-sustaining to the program. We don't do brick and mortar, it's like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Programs, fun programs, but not brick and mortar.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, one thing that we want to make sure we're doing here at the Monument with Monument Entertainment, which is the parent organization for our restaurants that we're creating and already have, is we posted out something that said, come do Spirit Night, right, for Ellie's. So this was just an Irish pub, come do Spirit Night. You could be your parent-teacher conference, whatever it is, PTA or locals. Barely got any info at nobody emailed. Like, very few people did. I was really surprised. But we would like to continue to have a monumental change series that helps the Winchester Rescue Mission. Hopefully, Power of the Purse coming on Thursday is going to be a huge hit. You still have tickets available?
We still have some tickets available. We have 2 levels of tickets. So we have the regular ticket price, $65. We have a VIP level. It's $75. You get a little earlier. You get some raffle tickets. I think this is like our 12th year for doing the event. So,
and the first time we partnered, obviously, here at the Monument.
Yep.
So please, you'll be able to see on our social media, if anyone's listening, that we've reposted a link to the tickets so that we can help you with that. And it's a beautiful place. They'll be selling up until that day. You can come hang out and see what we're like here and party with us. But, we would love to be able to help. I mean, obviously, we're a for-profit organization and times can be hard, but we want to make sure that we're doing our part. So if there is anyone that needs an internship or a job opportunity or a mentorship or whatever it is, we would like to offer our time and energy in that regard.
Well, maybe the cafe will become a feeder program to the other restaurants in town. That would be a great thing, right?
Yeah.
Justin, can I jump in and say this real quick? Just because I hear this all the time. Every time I talk about what we're doing at the mission, somebody will tell me, well, I'm in a for-profit, and they almost say it like it's a dirty word. And I'll tell you, man, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without the for-profits making the profit and then turning around and sharing that profit with us. And so I'm really, truly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, grateful for organizations like the Monument who have a really phenomenal product. Man, I was here Saturday night and loved it. Really incredible stuff going on here. Beautiful venue, and it's you guys doing what you do, making a profit, and then being generous with that profit at the end of the day that allows us to do what we do. So don't be ashamed of the fact that you guys are doing good work and you're making money off of it. That's not a bad thing if you're using that money to make for a better community. And man, what I saw here Saturday night, and I'm not just doing this because I really mean it, man. Like, I was blown away by the demographic that I saw here on Saturday night. I mean, from I saw what I believe to be, probably young college students, I'm at that age now where I see college students as young.
Yeah,
You know, that happened overnight. But up until I saw like a 70, 80-year-old lady out dancing on the floor, and I was like, this is incredible. And so, man, don't be ashamed of what you guys are doing as far as saying, well, we're a for-profit. No, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Make those profits and then turn around and invest those profits back in this community. That's what I think you guys are doing. So keep up this killer work. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I would follow up by saying it's the for-profits that when they end up giving us money, it doesn't have the strings attached to it that these grants have. Mm-hmm. And so that gives us some flexibility to help. There are people that don't fit neatly into grants, right? That they need certain things that the grant won't pay for. And so, that private funding really gives us the flexibility that we need. It's really critical.
Thank you. And Brandan, being here, that's evidence again that we're trying to be the place in Winchester, the top of Virginia, the Valley, whatever you want to say, or even the whole Commonwealth, where everyone can agree on us. And I said, well, how's that possible? Well, music touches people's soul. Mm-hmm. And so if music can touch you in different ways from different points of view, whether it be your bluegrass and Appalachian influence music, dance music, go-go music, whatever it is that moves you, that's the difference between us and the other animals on the planet, is that ability to come into that one moment in time in that music, in that memory, next to food. So if I smell something great, it reminds me of childhood. Mm-hmm. Chris is cultivating culinary greatness. That'll create some sort of memory for you. We want to have great memories here, monumental memories. I don't know, when I took this job, I was sitting there typing up all these missions and values and trying to set the fundamentals. And at first people were like, God, he's so weird. Why is he worried about all this stuff? It's because, the other stuff is fun for me. I like to look at numbers and assess stuff and get weird by myself listening to jazz music with Excel sheets. Like the really important,
he does.
The important part is getting the natural energy and synergy between the community and our team. So that's fantastic to be able to do that and be able to facilitate these fundraisers, and I hope we're going to have a lot of fun and a good relationship.
Well, man, anytime y'all got good country music, you give me a shout. That is my jam right there.
We will. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our community online? We'll be post this on Spotify with a clip on YouTube, just to share our personalities and who we are and what we're up to. But feel free to plug whatever you'd like.
Sure. Well, I'd just like to say, man, I'd love to give a tour to the new facility, both our old facility and new facility, and what we're working to accomplish out on Valley Avenue.
Sure.
Again, we're continuing to see this need in our community grow with the economic downturn. Again, I've been telling folks for a little while that homelessness is a policy issue, not a poverty issue. And with the economic downturn we're seeing poverty really begin to be part of the conversation as well. And so with us already being in a tough spot because of mental illness and the lack of resources there, and then you put the poverty issues on top of that, man, it gets pretty overwhelming, and we got quite a bit going on. And so would love the opportunity. Anybody wants to come by, see the new facility, see what our goals are, what we're working towards there, be happy to give a tour and show the great work that's happening at the rescue mission.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I would just like to say, if you or somebody is experience domestic violence or sexual assault, reach out to the Laurel Center. We're extremely confidential. That's what we're there for. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. We're here to help. We're 24/7. We talked earlier about the cafe. We're hoping to get it opened up by the end of the year. We'll see. We're having some supply chain challenges, getting windows in and lights and things like that. But that's going to, like you all, it's going to nurture the community. We're over on Cameron Street. About 80% of our health and human services agencies are over there. There's nowhere to eat, right? And so we wanted to create this space and that is going to nurture many of the organizations that, quite frankly, nurture the Laurel Center and our clients. So we're excited about that. Stay tuned. As we get a little closer to opening, we'll be putting some information out there. But we're proud of this project. It's kind of a social entrepreneurship experiment, if you will.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, me and the team will waddle over there if you need any help.
Absolutely.
We're really good at point of sale systems,
Absolutely.
inventory systems,
Absolutely.
food safety, and
I'm
We're
gonna
all
take
that stuff.
I'm gonna take you up on it.
yeah, we'll come over
I'm gonna
and
take you
give
up
you a
on
hand, whatever you need.
Absolutely.
trash removal.
yeah,
Yeah.
all that
These
good
are just things that Justin and I do in a given day.
Well, come on. I invite you guys over
All
for a
right.
tour. I'd
Yeah,
like to hear
we
your
do it.
advice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank y'all very much. We have
Thank
a
you.
karaoke tonight. Everybody listen on Thursdays if y'all want to cut a rug.
You don't want to hear me
You
sing.
do not want to hear me sing.
All right, we appreciate y'all and look
Great,
forward to
thank you.
come out to next Thursday's event. If you want to help and contribute, if you agree with what we're talking about, then you should just jump right on it. We'll see you Thursday.
Great. Thank
All right,
you.
bye.